So today I'm in Denmark, in Copenhagen, and lucky enough to be sitting with Siri Tellier, who is an external lecturer here at the University of Copenhagen in global health, and also an honorary, did you say?
Visiting professor.
Visiting professor at the Renmin University in China, and with a very long and interesting career, and someone I'm always feeling blessed to work with. So it's wonderful that you could sit down quickly and have a chat with us. Why do you work in the career? Why do you have the career? Why have you had the career that you've had, Siri? It must have been quite challenging. Some of the things you've done have been fairly impressive and profound. What drives you?
Well, I think global health, public health, global health, has some characteristics which are just unendingly wonderful. Number one is that it really has an ethical component. You can make so many people's lives so much better with, in some cases at least, so few resources. So that's a wonderful thing. And we've had success if we look back the last 50, 60 years. What an improvement we've had. So that is a source of daily inspiration and courage. And it was right from the beginning, what a wonderful thing to work in. I think another one is that it's just unendingly interesting because you're working with, you're working with medical specificities, but you're also working with political movements and personal histories and things like that. So the possibility of combining these different ways of thinking and enlarging your mind a little bit on the way, I think is unendingly interesting, and finding out why is this happening, why is it not happening. I mean, epidemiology is a detective story, so it's wonderful. And the third one is probably just more personal, apart from the fact that it's nice to work with something where you feel there is a purpose. It's just also wonderfully rewarding to work in different countries. It's unendingly interesting and pleasant to learn about other cultures and to work with people from other cultures. It helps you learn more about what you are yourself, and so it's just pleasant. It's also difficult because it means that it's difficult to have a family life that way, and that I think, and to have a country that way. So that is something that needs tending.
And you sort of, I remember when we first met, we've been working for a couple of years together, but when we first met, I didn't realise your background. You're a very modest person, and you don't talk a lot about your long, if I'm allowed to say that, career, and very interesting career. Could you tell us a little bit about, sort of, difficult to summarise it, but tell us a little bit about your career and the path that you've taken in global health?
Yes. Let's see. So I guess part of it is that I started out by being international. My father was in the Danish Foreign Service, so that was early on seen as quite normal that you went to other countries, and that was not a big problem. Then I wanted to study. I wanted to study in a cross-disciplinary manner, and that's why in 1965, when I graduated from high school, I went to the US because I had heard that you could that studies there were less sort of limited. You were able to look at different kinds of fields. So I went to Radcliffe College, which is now Harvard College, and took a BA in biology, and then went on to the Harvard School of Public Health. And then I worked for 2 years in Switzerland, and the rest of the time I have worked with various UN organizations, because I thought I don't necessarily want to work on health in Switzerland, I want to work globally. Mm-hmm. And so I joined the UN and worked for different UN organizations, and also had 10 years with the Danish Red Cross. So it's always been international health that I've worked with in some way or another for the last 40 years. And then, of course, when I was supposed to retire from the UN, you do that at age 62, 63.
You're giving away your age, Siri.
Yeah, it's well. You said it was a long experience. I was graduated from high school in '65.
True.
I did it at age 2.
I assumed you did.
That's right. But then I thought, okay, I want to know. All my work I have done evidence-based advocacy for improved policy, for improved programs which will improve people's lives. So that's basically the sort of that line of logic that I had. And I thought, okay, I've been doing this advocacy and policy. Now I want to know, why did I advise all these countries to do all these things? I want to go back and really understand the evidence base, the intellectual base. I had to just accept what other people told me. I wanted to know why. And so I thought, okay.
You were, because you always describe yourself as a practitioner, but
Yes.
maybe you're a born-again scientist now.
I'm afraid I am. I'm afraid I have a little bit
I'm
much.
sorry for that.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I have a little bit too much interest in the sort of the evidence base behind it all. It's a little bit excessive for somebody who's a practitioner. But so I'm very lucky that I could go back to teaching. I find it extremely rewarding because you really have to sort of put your thoughts in order. So that's what I'm trying to do, put my thoughts in order.
Well, we're very lucky that you've decided to come back to science, because I know that certainly in the department here, we're very lucky to have you. I just wanted to ask you about two sort of, you very modestly brushed over your career in the UN, but I want to ask you about two experiences. The first was, I understand that you worked in Afghanistan in the 1970s.
Yes.
And you were involved in, was it running the first national census
Yes.
there?
So far, first and so far only.
And you're a young female, obviously,
Right.
and maybe a mother at the time already, or not yet. Could you tell us what it was like running?
I met my husband in Afghanistan.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was it like? I mean, that must have been an amazing experience. Very challenging, but
Yeah. Well, Afghanistan, I think anybody who's worked there can't help falling in love with that country. It's a very beautiful country, very lovely people. Yes, it was. I had a wonderful boss, Nafis Sadiq from Pakistan. And some people were saying you can't send a young, single Western female to head of an office in Afghanistan. I was 31 at the time. She said, why not? And she sent me. That was, of course, one of the maybe not surprising experiences. The Afghans thought it was perfectly okay. What's the problem with having a young female? If she knows her stuff, that's okay. And so I found that was not at all difficult. Partially because when you're a foreigner, you are in any case sort of off the normal. So I found it no difficulty. It was more difficult. The only people who thought I couldn't do it were the other foreigners, as it were.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because they thought, this will never be accepted. No problem from the Afghans. So
and running a census at that time, I mean.
Well, we were a team, obviously. I was not the chief technical advisor.
Yeah.
But yes, of course it was many logistical problems, because actually while I was there in the middle of sort of all the preparation, it takes a long time to prepare for a census, because you first have to know where people live.
Of course.
And if you're in a country where there's no addresses, then that's difficult. You do a lot of mapping. And so during the time that we were preparing, you basically had a couple of, revolutions actually happening. And it's not so easy to do a census in the middle of civil unrest, basically civil war. So that's a problem, apart from the logistical one and all the other issues. Yes, so what you do is, as you always do with data, you collect quite a lot of empirical data, and then you just have to estimate the rest.
And so the other question, the other part of your career that I'm completely fascinated by, and actually even just we're talking about today, your work in North Korea. So
yes.
You've had a long relationship, a long working experience in Asia, and you're very well respected in China as well, as I know. But what's it like working in North Korea?
DPRK, as it's called.
Sorry, the DPRK.
Yes, so I was going there on a regular basis, living in Beijing and going maybe once every 2-3 months to Pyongyang.
When was this? Sorry,
this was 2002 to 2006.
Okay.
Actually, I'd worked with them also before with the Danish Red Cross during their food crisis.
Okay. And in what capacity were you working during this time?
In China, I was with UN Population Fund, UNFPA, and I was the country representative there. So, what is it like? Well, I think there are certainly challenges, but I think for somebody like me working with the UN, the main thing is to tap into what you have everywhere, which is people's professional ambitions. Ambitions meaning good ambitions. That is, that their goals. For example, if you speak to a medical doctor in DPRK, they want to save people's lives.
Yeah.
Yes, they have a lot of different concerns also, but they certainly would like to say. I remember interviewing medical doctors in some villages, and I said, how's it going, and how's the training that we're providing you? Any difference? And they would say, they smile, and they say, it's so much better, because now we don't have to refer all the people because we know better what to do. We have the medicines that are necessary, and the people in the village are smiling at us. Yeah. So they have...
So the motivations...
The motivations are very similar, I would think, as maybe, I'm an optimist, so maybe I'm showing it. But you can certainly connect, and the demographers I was working with, what did they want? They wanted to find the right data. And if I said, this data looks a little funny, they'd say, yes, they look a little funny, and they would be just as interested as I was in finding the right data.
Were there any major challenges? You make it sound like a cozy, peachy situation, but I can't imagine that's quite true.
Of course, it's a lot of challenges. It's a different country than many other countries. You don't go on the media. You don't sort of promote things in that way. People do have all kinds of concerns that they have to take care of. And of course, you have to be extremely... This is the big balance, I think, always in a situation like that, is to communicate with people, but also know when to stop. Because you don't...
You're not giving me hints, are you, Siri?
No. Because, that's really a... I don't know how to explain that, but I think we know that in our daily... anybody knows that when you talk to another person. You know how much to ask and when to stop to ask.
That must have been very apparent in North Korea.
Yes, that is more so than in Denmark, I would say.
Yeah. And just being conscious of the time, I wanted to ask you two final questions. What's currently driving you? What is an area you've had this such an interesting career? What's captivating your attention at the moment?
Well, many things are captivating my attention, but I'm trying to focus
in global health if we can.
No, but even within that...
Not your recent ice cream maker.
Yes, that's true. That's a wonderful one, isn't it?
It is.
Anyway, I suppose I'm trying to concentrate on 2 or 3 issues which are interrelated. One is aging of the population, and how to see that as a... Sorry to be optimistic again. How to see that as... How can we adapt and not just see it as this huge, terrible black cloud hanging over our heads, but how can we actually adapt our systems and our individual responses so that it's not such a huge problem. And interrelated to that, of course, non-communicable diseases, which are extremely important in the issue of aging. They're very much interrelated. And then jumping over to one of my last fields of interest, how does that work out in emergency situations, where I'm always driven by something where I see there's what I consider to be a gap, and I think there's a gap on how we respond to NCDs in emergencies.
And so retirement is definitely not happening anytime soon, by the sounds of it.
I retired.
Well, yeah, on paper, but not in practice.
No, I think we have to. That's part of healthy aging too, isn't it? We should we should have the joy of and contribute as much as we can.
True. And the final question: any advice for young people in their career? So someone starting out at the start of a career in global health, would there be anything that you would say to those people?
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, yes, do it.
Right.
It's a great field. Number two, I think is I found it very useful to have a specific skill. So that you have, I think they call it a T sometimes, a wide view, but then also a deep knowledge of something. That I've found is very satisfying to myself. That I have, my particular skill is public health demography. I like to know more than most of my colleagues on something specific, because then we can collaborate. They know more than I do on other fields. That, I think, is the best way of doing teamwork, which I think global health is often about. And the third thing is possibly try to keep your personal relations in place, including keeping, if that is what you want, don't underestimate the possibility of having a linkage to your own country. I'm back in Denmark now.
True.
Having lived abroad for so many years. That won't be true for everyone, but I have appreciated the fact that I could return to Denmark and... done
the full circle.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Siri. It's been a pleasure, and I'm sure many people will enjoy this podcast, and hopefully you get flooded with fan emails. But if not, certainly I'll be sending you one. So
okay.
Thanks
Thank you
for the
very
chat.
much. Thank you, Sandro.